giving you useful and practical tips to help you make more money selling travel. This is the Art of Selling Travel Podcast, and here to guide you through it all, your host, Glenda Beagle.
Welcome back for the final episode of 2023 on the Art of Selling Travel Podcast. And, this has been a fun episode to put together, and one that I very much look forward to doing each and every year. I wanted to look back at everything 2023 has taught me. Some of it's been good. Some of it didn't feel good at the time. And others of it were so absolutely a lesson I needed to learn. That is, I think, the biggest part of being in business. Hell, being in life. That if we don't learn the lessons, we're going to continue to repeat them until it's actually becomes something that we learn to accept in so many ways. So some of these lessons are going to be ones that, yes, they reaffirmed in 2023, but at the same time, they're lessons that I've learned over the years so that I can bring them to you and hope that maybe there's something in there that just gives you one more nudge to really ground it into your own world and your own business. The first one, of course, is having a good sense of humor. There are so many things in life that I would far rather laugh at or laugh with than cry. I always said you get two options. You can laugh or you can cry when things go wrong. And I really don't like feeling dehydrated. So let's laugh. And I've got a bit of a dark sense of humor. Don't get me wrong. You can't be married to somebody who works in federal corrections on the good side of the bars, not the bad, but he works on the good side of the bars. And hang out with people, that is all they see, all the evil and everything else of life, and not have a good sense of humor that goes with it, albeit, a little dark. But I've really just decided I need to just accept it. Am I always going to be a hit in a crowd? Heck no. There is always going to be somebody that stink eyes me, and that's okay because I'm just going to be me. I don't have time to pretend to be anybody else. We're going to touch on that a little bit more a little bit later on. But it also then, we have the choice. We can be somebody else, or we can wait until everything's perfect. And here's the deal. I don't want to be anybody else, and I don't got time for waiting around anymore. Life is not perfect. Business is not perfect. I've heard other podcasts where they will talk that it takes 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 3, 5, 12, 15 years in order to get their business off the ground. Now, they're not talking about generating sales. They're literally talking about opening the doors to take a first client. I don't have that kind of time to wait anymore. Not that I ever did. And I don't want you to wait that long. Nothing is going to be perfect. You are never going to know it all. All you can do is put one foot in front of the other and be willing to have the humility when you don't know the answer to say that you need to look into it. And also have the strength of character to be willing to go look for the answer and not just try and make it up as you go. The timing's never going to be right. So if you're waiting till some magical moment where everything, the heavens open up, the sky gives you this beautiful sun, it's not going to happen. Just do it. Just get it going. If you have a vision of something you want to create, something you want to do, something you want to be, just do it. Stop waiting. Nobody's ever been promised tomorrow. And they sure as heck haven't been promised 5 years from now or 10 years from now. If you want to get your travel business to the next level, That starts today. If you want to get it started, it starts today. Not once you know everything, not once you have everything. That's not how it works. A really big lesson I learned this year was that rest does not mean lazy. I used to think I was the laziest person I knew because every time I wanted to do something, I felt so exhausted that I just couldn't get it going. I couldn't get out of bed some days because I was so exhausted. Funny story, it turns out that I was burnt the freak out. Ironically, this goes back to that whole sense of humor. I recorded a podcast, oh heavens, probably about 6 months ago about, how do you avoid burnout and things like that. And wouldn't you know, that podcast episode came out, all was going well. I recorded it, it all did well, everything else. And I was just boom, 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 just working through my list. And then everything hit like a ton of bricks. I had things going on in my personal life. I had things going on in the business. I had things going on in a charity that I'm a part of. All of these things collided at once. And there I was. The same week I put out an episode about burnout, I was in my bed, burnt the freak out. Maybe that's where that sense of humor, that lesson on this, having a sense of humor about things, came from this year. But being tired isn't being lazy. It's called I didn't listen to my body. In these last few months, we're going to talk about a lot of things that have changed for me in this last few months. And it's not because, yay, look at me, but it's because, hey, check this out. Look what took me far too long to figure out. Hopefully we can give you an express pass in what it is that I learned. But in this last couple of months, I have prioritized sleep. And I get it. We all have 1,000 reasons why. Heck, I probably could have written a book on all the reasons why that works for other people and not me. But it was about 2 weeks ago, I said to my husband, I said, oh, good gravy. I feel more rested than I think I have ever felt in my entire adult life. How is that even possible? And it's because I figured out what it took to rest. I also figured out that it is not a matter of punishing myself to sit at a desk for X amount of hours in a day. When the creativity is dried up, the productivity is dried up, all of these things have just dried up. Why would I continue to punish myself just because something's there? What if instead I sent an email just letting them know that it'd be one more day? I then started to build my calendar so that I have periods where I will have X number of days at a time where it is blocked out. Nobody can book an appointment. They cannot book a podcast interview. They cannot book a coaching call, nothing. Ironically, going back to the sense of humor, somehow in the calendar, it always seems to be the week following when I get my hair dyed, because the week leading up to when my hair gets dyed, that's apparently when I decide we're going live on everything. That is going to hold true in January. So if you do not see like a great big white skunk line up my hair, if you are on some of those calls in January, when Epic Growth kicks off, I'm doing a coaching call for an event that I was a part of in November. All of those things. My hair appointment is like 4 days later. So we are going to be spraying with spray on hair color just before we go live. So part of that sense of humor is making sure that in 2024, we schedule things based on doing them the week after the hair gets dyed. But if I continue to sit at my desk because you got to put in 35 hours, got to put in 40 hours. Heck, when I owned my own agency, I put in 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and I do not suggest that whatsoever. In fact, when people say to me, why did you become a coach? I said, well, one, I love it. I love to see everybody else get the ahas. I said, but the reason why it should be me is because I've already been there. I got the t-shirt and I want you to be able to borrow it. I don't want you to have to go out and earn your own t-shirt. Yeah, you're still going to make your own errors and you're still going to make your own missteps and things like that because you need to in order to learn from it. But I want to take you to a point where you don't have to fall in the canyons and climb all the way back up because, again, that's when you get tired. When you prioritize your sleep, prioritize your health, it is unbelievable what can happen. My creativity is up through the roof. I am probably in a better mood than I have been in years. My husband may disagree, but that's another story. But my creativity and my productivity when I am at my desk are at a whole other level. It's also allowed me to become more consistent, which was another huge lesson. Yes, we all hear, like, we got to be in our business, this, that, the other. But it is the consistency of showing up, the consistency of recording what is going on each and every week in your business. In August, I started being consistent where I recorded my stats every single week. I can tell you exactly how many people are on my email list, how many people are on my Facebook, how many people are in the Facebook group, how many people are on my Instagram, how many downloads I have, how many sales of each type of program, each type of coaching, everything. It's all in my stats. And I can tell you how I don't like to have regrets because, again, it's those lessons. But I happened to go back and I found them from January of 2022. And even just to see the difference between January of 2022 and August of 2023, some of it had grown quite a bit. Some of it hadn't really moved much at all. But since August of 23, I have recorded every single week. It is now almost an obsession. It used to be Mondays that I went in and did it. Now I do it on Sundays because I'm so flipping excited that I want to see it. Because here's the thing. When we don't track it, when we don't stay on top of it, then we let those little stories we tell ourselves kind of take over. Because each week I'm recording on a Sunday. And then on Wednesdays, I send it. So inevitably, I'm going to get at least one unsubscribe. I think my biggest week is I got 7 unsubscribes in 1 week. And so a lot of my growth, for some reason, happens between Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And then the unsubscribes come on Wednesday, when things just kind of seem to stall out for the last half of the week. So the last thing that happens, according to the story I told my brain tells me, is that I lost people. Things went down. This wasn't good. And so because I consistently record it, I'm able to look back and say, okay, so I lost 7, but in reality, I gained 43. So overall, I have 36 growth. But yet my brain doesn't remember 43 people that came into my world. It only remembers the 7 that went out. And who wants to continue a business that just has things going out, nobody's coming in, and you have that story, and then it just plays on a loop? Almost, what do they call it? Like an earworm, that song that gets stuck in your head that you can't get rid of? Those stories that we tell ourselves, those things that tell us that we're not good enough, or that nobody wants us, or that all of these sorts of things, that's what plays in our ear. But when you're recording things and you're consistently doing it, guess what? You quickly find out that your brain's telling you a lie. The other part of being consistent is I can record everything else that's going on. I can record if there's a big holiday. Is there a big political shakeup? Is there something going on in the world that's going to keep people distracted? Did I not show up? I sure as heck can't be upset if nobody found me when I haven't shown up this week. And because I'm doing this, and because I'm constantly getting that reaffirmation, because data doesn't lie, nor does it have an emotion. It allows me to continue to show up because it's always feeding me with something that I can either work on, improve, or celebrate. I celebrate more when I was busy and didn't show up and we didn't lose than I do when I have giant weeks of growth. Because to me, when I was in the middle of something and wasn't able to show up and we still maintained, or that we had slight growth, to me is a much bigger win than when it is, as they say, balls to the wall going for it. And we're getting big growth. I would say that's actually another thing we need to do. We have to celebrate the wins. Now, maybe you're sitting there thinking, I don't have anything to celebrate. Well, then celebrate the fact you're still breathing. You're still standing. You're still here. Celebrate that somebody referred you. Celebrate that a client said yes. Celebrate that you picked out your colors. Celebrate that you've got your host picked out. Whatever it is, no matter how big or how small it is, you've got to celebrate. Because when you don't know how to celebrate the small stuff, how on earth will you have any idea how to celebrate the big wins? Because I promise you, if you don't learn how to celebrate the little wins, a big win is never going to be big enough to celebrate. I remember this year when we hit 5,000 downloads of all time. And that was early September, actually. Early September. It feels like a lifetime ago. So the podcast turned to on October 18. And it took until September to get 5,000 total downloads. That's ridiculous. 23 months to hit 5,000 downloads. Funny story, in the 4 months since then, we've done almost another 10,000 downloads. I remember when I hit that 5,000, I was like, oh my goodness, that's kind of like, wow, because it had taken so long. It had taken us until June of 23 to hit 2,000 downloads. And now, here we are, between June and September, we got 3,000 downloads. That was insane. Now, between September and the end of 23, we've added almost another 10,000. I remember when 10,000 was like my holy crap, I can't believe that's happening goal. And we blew right on past it. I sent it to a friend of mine and I said, look at that. We hit 5,000. And she's like, okay, what are you doing to celebrate? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like 10,000 is my goal. And she's like, yeah, but you can't get to 10,000 without going through 5,000. And I'm like, you're right. So I started putting it out on social, because when I took the average of how many minutes an average episode was, multiplied it by 5,000, because that's how many times my show's been downloaded, the amount of hours that my voice is in somebody's ear is mind-blowing. And I thought, holy crap. How is it possible people are willing to listen to me for that long? And since then, it feels like the podcast has exploded, and I am celebrating every single day, every single week when I see those downloads come in. And you want to know something? I am celebrating the crap out of it, all while knowing that next year I'm probably going to laugh at my celebration of 5,000. Recently, here just a couple weeks ago, we crossed over where we are now downloading in 1 week what took an entire year to get to. Imagine that. Imagine for a minute, we're talking about your travel business, and you think about how hard it is to get that first year going. Now, I want you to imagine, no matter where you are in your business, what if you're now able to produce in 1 week what you used to produce in 1 year or 1 month? And you can now do that in 1 week. How much will that change your business? If we don't learn to celebrate those individual wins along the way, we'll never recognize that we're going where we're headed. Instead, we'll continue to constantly look for that shiny object. That's one of the first things that I do in coaching. When you work one-to-one with me, or even within our group, when we start going through what's not working, I flip the switch and say, what is? Because instead of constantly switching gears, constantly looking for that shiny object that's always out there, we need to take a moment, celebrate what's winning, and then tweak, rinse, and repeat. What if you already are holding gold? It's just covered in dirt, and all you got to do is clean it off. You've got to learn to celebrate the wins. Learning to celebrate my wins, absolute game changer. And I always said, it's really funny. A couple years ago when somebody said, okay, what kind of coach are you going to be? I'm like, I'm never going to be the cheerleader. Nobody needs a cheerleader. Guess what? People need a cheerleader. So when you come into my group and you say, I just booked this and I'm so freaking happy, I am going to be even happier for you. Because we need to learn how to celebrate our wins, but also other people's wins. Because when we can learn to celebrate for other people, it gives us more permission to celebrate for ourselves. And as we're heading into 2024, you need to be able to celebrate, not just that the clock has changed from 23 to 24 and that the ball has dropped in Times Square or the fireworks are going off somewheres, but because you've accomplished something. And even if that accomplishment is simply not giving up, that is something to be celebrated. Another big lesson 2023 gave me was accountability. You know what? Also, funny enough, while in the midst of putting the notes together for this one, I was reading the book 12 Weeks. And there's a quote in there. And I got to grab the book so that I can make sure I credit the right person. And the quote was, it doesn't list who it is that said it, but it said, accountability is not consequences, it's ownership. Accountability is not punishing yourself because you did or didn't do it. It's owning the fact that you made the decision to either do it or not. And from there, when you accept that accountability, when you accept that ownership, it allows you to make decisions that will either move you forward or hold you where you're at. Accountability has been like the rocket fuel in my business. I've talked about it before in the Facebook group. We talked about it on the lives. I joined a mastermind of other people that were in a program with one of my coaches. And we show up every week. We talk about where we're at. We talk about what we've been doing, things like that. Go through it. I could show you exactly what day I started with them in my weekly stats, because the first week it went up a little bit. The second week it went up a little more. And after that, it was like flipping rocket fuel. And away it went. because accountability meant not that I was being accountable to them, but that I was being accountable to myself. And because I had to show up every week and take ownership for whether or not I did what I said I was going to do or set out to do, I damn well did it. I showed up in my business. I showed up in ways I had never shown up before in this business. Accountability paired with consistency is pure rocket fuel. The next lesson I learned this year, and this one I'm going to say was a really, really hard one. I'd really like to say I am talking about it from the scar, not the wound, but I don't know if I'm 100% there yet. But people are always going to judge you. They're going to judge your intentions. They're going to judge your integrity. And they're going to question things because of where they're at in life, because of where they're at in business, because of what their circumstances are, not because of yours, but because of theirs. And they might even make accusations. It's hard to remember that that's a reflection of them, because in the moment it can feel so personal. But that's their choice. Your choice is how you respond. Which was another lesson. Not everything has to be responded to. A friend of mine, we kind of laughed this year. Biggest lesson we've worked on is not every email should be responded to immediately. I'm working on a large project within our company that's going to be expanding in 2024 and beyond. And I'm super excited for it, working with some phenomenal companies and other such for this. And I remember getting this one email and I messaged a friend of mine. I'm like, OMG, 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 you're never going to believe this. Like, what do I say? And she's like, nothing. And I'm like, what? She goes, you don't want to look too eager. I'm like, but I friggin' am. I don't want to wait. This is how even people in sales need to be reminded. You don't want to come across too eager. And she goes, that becomes a Monday problem. I'm like, okay, because it was Friday afternoon. I'm like, okay, we'll make this a Monday problem. 8 a.m. I'm back at my desk. I messaged her. I'm like, hey, it's Monday. It's now a Monday problem. She's like, oh yeah. Do you think about it on the weekend? I said, no. She's like, good. I said, what do I say? She's like, oh, I just told you it was a Monday problem. She goes, I didn't say it was my problem. That's that sense of humor. You've got to have friends that surround you that will keep things light for you too. But the thing is you've got to respond without emotion. And sometimes that does mean that you have to wait a day or two or a week before you respond. You don't want to respond just out of emotion, just out of haste. I am the first one to admit that sometimes when my emotions kick in, I stop reading and I just start responding. And that's been a big lesson this year, is that I have to calm down. I have to take a step away. I can't just respond. That whole saying, coming in hot. Yeah, I was coming in hot. Now I need to slow down. I need to not respond immediately. I need to process so that we can take emotion out of it. Not every email needs to be responded to immediately, and some not even at all. The only thing you can do for your business is be in alignment with yourself, with your clients, and in complete integrity of both. Be you, not who they say you have to be, not on what their timeline says it has to be. Do you. but do it with integrity. People are going to talk about you. People are going to say crap about you. They did about me this year. The only thing I can say is I worked 100% within my own integrity. And that's what's going to carry me through. Because when people come for you, if you are 100% within your integrity, let them. That's a them problem, not a you problem. People need what you take for granted. There are things in your business that you're just going to take for granted. Perhaps you're newer, and right now you're thinking that seems impossible. Maybe you've been doing this for 25 years and you still don't see that. But trust me, what you take for granted is what other people need. Maybe you are or were a school teacher and now you're becoming or are a travel advisor. Guess what? Your ability to hold to a deadline, your ability to herd kittens makes you a phenomenal choice. Maybe you're an ER nurse that's now a travel advisor. Your attention to detail to make sure things get administered at specific times and be able to hold the chaos calm is something that you might take for granted, but other people need. You have skills from outside of our industry that people need, and they need you to have them. Ultimately, the biggest lesson I learned this year is what you view as your biggest weakness may just actually be your superpower in disguise. I'm going to repeat that. What you may view as your biggest weakness just might be your superpower. There are so many things in life, in business, that we can look at it and say, oh, I don't know about that. Oh, how will people judge? How will people think? Blah, 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 blah. And yet that becomes your superpower. For me, it was chasing squirrels. I used to be so scared of admitting I was about to chase a squirrel. Heck, I chased a bunch today. I just didn't name them as squirrels, but there were a few things that came up on the list. Now I'm going to have to go back to listen to this episode just so I can make my list again. Because as I talked, more of them came up. And then I was on a live training. I think it was with Travify. I was doing a presentation for them, and I had an option after we were to be able to go in and download the chat, because that's how I also get what are those obstacles, because sometimes that chat is just flying and I can't see it all at one time. So they had it set up so that I'd be able to download it to be able to see what it is that people were saying, so that I could see what questions they had and other such, because we had invited everybody to come join us over in the Facebook group. P.S. If you're not in the Facebook group, you got to come join us. I'm going to link it up in the show notes. But anyways, so that it helps me build what topics, so that when we go live each week, we are hitting topics that are really relevant to today's travel advisor. Anyhow, I was reading through them. And the funny thing is it was like a month or two later before I actually got to them, just because we had so much going on back to back. It was over a month, because I did that early October, hopped a plane to go to Pennsylvania, and then we had to reroute our trip for a family funeral. And so it was like mid-November, or maybe late November, when I finally got a chance to read them. And obviously I'd said something about, hang on, I got to chase a squirrel for a second. And somebody said, OMG, that's my favorite part when she's on the podcast. And somebody else said, I know, that's when I grab a pen and paper, because I know it's about to get good. And I burst out laughing, because for years, that's been my biggest insecurity. That's been something that people have always kind of not made fun of, but just, okay, you need to stay on task, because we all grew up in the traditional system of you got to stay on task. You can't go. Yeah, no, I chase squirrels because this idea triggers that idea, which triggers that idea. It's just how my brain functions. And lo and behold, somebody said, actually, there was two of them, that's my favorite part. So I was laughing about it on one of my coaching calls. And they were like, yes, that's totally my favorite part. That's when all the good stuff comes. And so here I was for years thinking that that was my biggest weakness. But it turns out it's actually my biggest superpower. The other one that I was never sure how to take was the fact that I had a very good physical business. Like I had a travel agency for many, many years. And it was right on Main Street. It was a big building, like the whole shebang. We had a whole team, this, that, the other. And I actually stayed in that business longer than I should have because I was like, but what does it say? Like, can I actually become a coach and close a business? Like, does that make sense? But when somebody asked me, why didn't you just sell it? And I was actually having this conversation not too long ago. And I said, I didn't sell it because my biggest fear is that somebody would make me stay. No matter how much I love to sell travel, I love it. I am stepping away from it officially in 2024. I will probably still have my toes in it and through until 25 just to clear out the files. But we're hitting a point where I have the opportunity to coach 1000% of my time, where I can coach full out. And that's what I want to do. And so over the next while, I'm going to be thinning down my clients and that sort of thing. But that's exciting. But I also thought perhaps maybe that was a weakness. But I didn't close it because it failed. I closed it because I evolved. I moved on. I wanted a new path. And what actually is my superpower in all this is one, I can recognize when it's time to make a shift in your business. In fact, I just did a call a couple of days ago with somebody else who was going through a major transition in what the future of their business looked like. And I was able to recognize a lot of what they said as things of what I thought. So again, it's my superpower. I have a phenomenal coach, and one of his favorite sayings is success is a crappy teacher. And I love it because it is the lessons that you learn from things not going right that makes you brilliant. And at this point, in some ways, I would say I'm a freaking genius. And I say that because for years, I've had the opportunity to learn from the trenches. But I also have the humility to tell you it did not always work. But I don't know about you, nothing in life goes as planned. The difference is whether or not you can get back up, dust yourself off, and try it again. I said earlier, I bought the t-shirt, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I'm willing to let you borrow it so you don't have to make the same mistakes I did. When I started with my own agency, I had come out of an agency. So I'd worked 5 years for somebody else in their agency. Everything was pen and paper. So to come over to my own, to build a CRM, like it was an entirely different thing. We're talking 2011. That should not have been so foreign, but it was. And then I spent a lot of years at my own agency. And in those years, I learned how to implement marketing. I learned what bad marketing was. I learned what marketing works. I learned what marketing works that I didn't want to have work. You know, when you market those deals And then you get really frustrated because all anybody wants is a deal. Trust me, that marketing, it works. You just don't want it to work. And so, how did I have to transition my marketing from that? How did I teach my team to sell? Whether they were an inside team or an outside team, how did they learn how to sell? Because there were so many struggles that they all had. Because again, what I took for granted was what they needed. I could probably sell in my sleep if I wanted to. And I don't say it to be ego and all this. I just genuinely love solving puzzles and making sure that people get the right thing. At Christmas time, I love to come up with ideas that people didn't even know that they wanted. Sometimes I swing and miss. Sometimes I hit it out of the park. But to me, it's what can I give them that they didn't even know was what they wanted. But when they get it, they're like, holy crap, how did you know? Like, I never even would have thought of this. How did you come up with that? That's how I was with my clients. My travel clients, when we would sit down and do consultations, by the time we were done the consultation, they'd be like, holy smokes, I didn't even think that was a possibility. That's when I knew I was on to gold. That's when I knew I had something. I was never a good order taker. Instead, I wanted consultations that were so good. My clients were like, yes. And they were referring me before they even left. That was my superpower when I was selling. And now I think it's my superpower when I help other people grow their business. We have some phenomenal programs coming up in 2024. We're going to be bringing back Curious to Booked. I've had a lot of requests for that. In fact, the wait list is getting quite large. So we are going to be releasing that in later February, I'm going to say. I'm going to link up all of the different programs that we've got on the go in the show notes so that you can go check them out. But more importantly, I want you to take a moment, look back at what 2023 taught you. What did you learn from 2023? Because if we don't learn the lesson, we are doomed to repeat it. That is the one surefire thing that's going to happen. If we don't learn from a mistake, from something that's happened, and it does not have to be catastrophic to have still been a lesson. In fact, I believe that if we learn the lesson earlier, it's not going to get catastrophic. It only gets catastrophic because we didn't pay attention to the other 87 times the universe tried to teach us that lesson. But when you are learning something, just know that it takes time and it might just knock you off your game. My biggest lesson this year knocked me off my game for a whole week. It was unexpected. And I would love to think that I've learned it fully this time, so that next time it happens is nothing more than a blip. And yeah, I said next time it happens, because the reality is you can't control what others think, say, or do. You can only control how you respond and what you put out. You can only control what's within your control. Everything else is within somebody else's. I am wishing you the very best new year. I cannot wait for everything amazing coming to you in 2024. We have amazing things happening in 2024 here on the podcast. In fact, next week, we kick off with not one, but 2 episodes a week. The first episode is moving to a Tuesday, and we are kicking off the new year with a phenomenal money mindset interview with Marilyn. You are going to love it. And then on the Friday, we are kicking off our brand new Advisors After Hours on air. It's basically going to be like a talk show is what we're working towards building. We're going to be starting off with a couple of a couple of episodes of it on Fridays to give you a little bit of a feel for what it is, almost like as a pre-launch. And by the time we get into February, we will be full talk show style with that. And I can't wait. Until then, happy selling, happy new year. And I can't wait to connect with you going forward. Happy selling.